that's what my topic is. As far as I know, we started off with a 37 LaSalle, donated by a predecessor of Hussey Mosier. I'm not sure if it was Evans and Johnson or Johnson and Johnson, but anyway, that was our first ambulance. And we were almost out of business before we got in business. At the time, Taten's Garage was on Main Street. That was their trucking terminal. That was before they built the front end on for Sherwin-Williams and all that. Now the building was sat back in 50, 60 foot from the sidewalk. All right, there is a big door in the front next to the Arcadia Theater, a big door to the parking lot for the Arcadia, and maybe one on Water Street. Anyway, on that front door, inside the door, there is a gasoline pump where they gassed up all their trucks. It's a no-no today, but that's what happened. Anyway, one day, they were gassing up a truck, and it started a fire. Well, I think they did a pretty good job of getting the fire out, but one of the casualties was the 37 LaSalle. Now the 37 LaSalle was stored down there because one of the reasons, Bob Taten was the first captain of the drivers. And so he offered to let him store the ambulance in the garage. Well, it was during the war and you couldn't buy a new ambulance, so they had it refurbished. And so then, after that, after the war, then they started buying new ambulances, new Cadillacs. Now we rode style for about 30 some years. Cadillacs all the way. That went on up until the mid-80s. And we got two, I think it was 1984. We bought two new high tops that would hold 4 litter patients. Now, in retrospect, they weren't very practical. It was a good PR thing that you could haul 4 people. The only way you could haul 4 people is when we had a drill, say for a school bus accident. You had smaller people, you knew there wasn't any serious casualties, and so you could take the time to load that ambulance up with 4 patients. And you put one patient in, they had bent seats in there for the attendant. So you put now these were just folding cots with a metal tubing around the side. All right, so you put it up on the bent seat, and then you had hooks from the ceiling. All right, so it would take 2 to 3, maybe 4 people to put that patient up there. And they better be small because their nose is almost rubbed against the ceiling. All right, so you put that patient in, and then you get one and put another on the seat, then you get another one and hoist that one up in the air. Now, you don't put a 200-pounder up there. You know, you put somebody that's pretty small. And then you finally put your litter in. But the thing is, there wasn't any room to work on anybody. You know, it got pretty crowded back there. So I don't know, as far as practicality goes, is maybe they might have hauled 2 at an emergency, but I don't know if they ever did haul 4. I can't really say. Now, those 84s, and one might have been an 85, I don't know what happened to those, but 20-some years ago or so, the Ambulance Association entered into an agreement with a guy downstate, and he was supposed to refurbish those 2 ambulances. All right, he was going to give us back one and keep the other one for his work to refurbish ours. I still haven't. I have no idea I always thought that'd be kind of cool to have one of those 84 ambulances in Old Engine 3 in a parade. I thought that'd be nice. Anyway, the next thing is the territory we covered. And we covered a lot of territory. I remember going on a call within a half a mile of Gaines for a motor vehicle accident. We got there, and the only thing I can remember is we had a one patient, and she was laying on the bank. I don't know where the car was or anything about the call. But right away we knew we had a problem. This is a pretty hefty woman. And we were trying to decide what to do. So we finally we had a rolled up litter with 6 handles on it. And we put that in the ditch. And then, as gently as we could, we rolled her over and down onto the litter. Now the biggest bugaboo with that was, she was laying face down when she hit the litter. And we thought, well, there's no way we're going to turn her over. And so there's a lot of help around with bystanders, so we got them to help us get the litter out of the ditch, onto the cot, and into the ambulance. And that's the way we brought her in, face down. Then we had one worse than that. We had this one woman, they used to come call the ambulance about twice a year. Now, when they dispatched for that ambulance call, they always dispatched a carload of drivers to go along with it. So you always had about at least 6 guys respond on that call. Now, you could get around the litter with a little effort, but you couldn't fasten the belt on the litter. So you take 3 or 4 guys with their back against the patient and brace their feet so she wouldn't roll off the litter on your way to the hospital. Then the ultimate. They went out one time, and I don't know, the patient hadn't been out of that room in years. They wouldn't fit through the door. Now that presents a problem. Well, they went to plan B, C, D, F, G, and H. And they finally cut a hole right out of the side of the house. Back to flatbed, 1-ton pickup, up to the hole. They got the patient and the mattress, slid them into the back of the pickup, and that's the way they went to the hospital. All right, then as far as our other territories that we covered, Middlebury, Little Marsh, Tioga and beyond, Mansfield, toward Roseville, Mainsburg, Morris, Oregon Hill, Blackwell. That's pretty lot of territory. Now the only place we didn't go was Blossburg. Now they started shortly after we did, I think. But they had a hospital over there, and so I think that's one reason maybe they got started with an ambulance. And I don't know how many of you remember this Blossburg State Hospital, how many of you even knew that there was a hospital over there. But there was a hospital there long before Wellsboro had one, the Blossburg State Hospital. And I was even a patient in that hospital back in the early 30s when we lived in Gilton. My mother and dad took me and my older sister, next oldest sister, to Blossburg, and we had our tonsils out. And we stayed overnight. Then about 30 years later or so, we took my dad over by ambulance because he was feeling poorly and he passed away over there. Oh, that's the way it goes. All right. Training. Now you've got a lot of training now, but what, it's only 120 hours or something? you know, minuscule. We had a lot of training too back then. Now the first thing we had to do was pass the first aid course. That was pretty strenuous. We got a first aid card. All right. Then when you got rid of that, then you got an advanced first aid card. Now, when you got done with those courses, you were certified to be able to put a Band-Aid on just about anybody. One of the first calls I was on, the hospital used to dispatch all the calls. They had a switchboard operator 24/7 up there. A call would come into them. They would call the individual drivers by phone. That was our dispatch system. They'd call, and all right, they called me early one Saturday morning. Said there's an automobile accident down in Middlebury, could I go? I said yes. All right, I'm not sure if I was the first or second guy. If you were the first guy, they'd tell you that and that they were gonna work on the second. If you were the second guy, they'd say, so-and-so will meet you at the ambulance. So anyway, we made the call. The patient was laying on the bank of the creek down there, just below the Middlebury School and the bridge. We brought him in to the emergency room. Now, I'm not sure if that was before or after I got my Band-Aid laid. Long time ago. You know, you talk about the emergency room and the emergency complex you've got up here. When we come in, the original hospital, you had an emergency room. One room, approximately 15 by 30, with one exam table in the middle. And in the early days, they didn't know where you were, what you had, until you opened up the door into the hospital. Then they had people on call. There was nobody there to staff the emergency room. When you got there, then they would use the PA system and get the doctors and nurses to respond. And I suppose you've all been taught the rules of the road. Now, don't do this, but you're supposed to yield the right of way. Now, it come to me that we had an ambulance call one day, emergency, and the ambulance is going up East Avenue. All right, they had their red light and siren. Well, there's one guy in front of the ambulance that would not pull over. And there's enough traffic coming, the ambulance can pass. And the ambulance drivers get frustrated and more frustrated. I think he had his foot all the way through that federal queue trying to get that guy to move over, and he just wouldn't go. And so anyway, traffic did slow down. The ambulance went around, but instead of just passing him, he got alongside and he forced the guy off the road. He literally forced him off the road. So the guy pulled over on the berm and stopped. The ambulance pulled over and stopped in front of him. Now the lights were still flashing on that ambulance. That driver got out, went back, and he climbed up one side of that other guy, one side and down the other, and gave him to understand that when there was an emergency vehicle coming, he better pull over. And then he walked back to the ambulance, shut the door, hit the gas and the siren, and continued on his way. I'm probably forgetting some of the stuff that I had thought about, but this is a month later, a month ago. Another thing, I'm not quite used to this business. We spend thousands of dollars now paying ambulance drivers. I recall years ago, we got paid to one turkey dinner once a year. And we looked forward to it. That was the highlight of the whole year, was that turkey dinner. Women served it. It was family style. They brought it out in platters. You emptied one platter, they'd fill it up. And most of the time we had them at the American Legion building. And I think the Legion Auxiliary had a hand in it for a number of years. The Wealth Settlement church ladies had a hand in it. Once they got everything functional up here, then we started having them in here, and the Fire Department Auxiliary did it. And once every 5 years, the anniversary year, starting with what, 42 or whatever, 47, 52, then they would have the spouses attend a dinner also. But before that, you know, just the drivers. And almost everyone wore a suit or a jacket and tie. It was really something. And you got that turkey dinner with oyster dressing and an apple pie with a slice of cheese on it. And we really look forward to that. Now, the only people that got credit in the brochure were those that have reached 10, 15, 20 years of driving. Now, you could maybe have driven 13 years, but if you didn't have a creditable year as a service, you didn't get credit for that 13. I think you had to have, what, 15 trips or 1,000 miles or something? And that's what counted. On the back of the brochure, they had everybody listed. Excuse me. And they would list the number of years you've been driving and the awards that you got. So you might had 28 years and you got awards for 25. And they look forward to having their name on that brochure. And then they finally, years ago, they used to give them, what? I think a cigarette lighter. That was their pay. All right, then they finally went to the $25 for 10 years of service. And increments of 25 for every 5 years after that. And so, you know what you've got now, and that gives you a little insight of what happened years ago.
Thanks, Tom.